consumer-centric transparency meeting savvy market expectations. It's an interesting word to use in the title of the presentation, savvy market expectations. Let's see what it's all about. And to speed things up a little, allow me to introduce our speakers who seem to be all ready to enter this stage and smiling. That's always good. Now, hoping I will not mispronounce any of the names, we have Daria Reisch, co-founder and CEO at Agrinorm AG. We have Jaap Rommelaar, co-founder at ZoomAgri. We have Elena Gascón Villacampa, project coordinator at Eatex Food Innovation Hub, CNTA. We have the panel discussion moderator on whose performance depends the dynamic and quality of the discussion today, Andres Anton, founder and co-host Tomorrow's Bites. And applause, please. It's all set. Enjoy.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me fine? Yeah, okay, perfect. My name is Andres Anton. I am co-host and co-founder of Tomorrow's Bites. It's a podcast that me and my co-founder, Jaap Rommelaar, we started because we wanted to have a podcast that had a broader reach when it comes to opinions in the food industry. So we try to bring professionals in all the food industry. You can find it easily in Spotify. You will probably recognize some of the guests that we bring there. And if you don't, just tell us who shall we bring, because that is, we want to hear all the opinions. We're here to discuss about transparency. Transparency is ironically something that seems really complex when it's just as easy as showing the world as it is. But yeah, we all belong to the food industry. We would like to have a more transparent industry, but not only because we are insiders, but also because we are consumers. So we know that the lack of transparency in the food industry can lead to many problems, such as unfair trade, animal abuse, manipulation, and in the end to fear and misinformation. But transparency is easier said than done. And we need better technologies, we need better auditories, we need better legislation. And those all come with a cost. So today we are going to discuss here who is going to pay for the cost and how can we make sure that it ends up here. So for this, we have a great panel today. We have Daria Reisch. She is an agri-food expert with over a decade of experience, co-founder and CEO of Agrinorm, where she uses her deep understanding of fresh produce and supply chain to promote sustainability and innovation. Agrinorm uses AI and advanced software technology to optimize fruit and vegetable supply chains. Jaap is the co-founder of ZoomAgri after a long career working in trading and moving 50 million metric tons of soybeans in Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay. In 2017, he founded ZoomAgri to transform the testing, inspection and certification of agricultural commodities and food globally. And we have Elena, sorry. Elena is a nutritious and food technologist working in the Eatex Food Innovation Hub. It's a collaborative innovation hub for transferring and implementing technology. This hub has been promoted by the CNTA and Spanish National Center for Food Technology and Safety in collaboration with more than 10 R&D centers of the Navarre Research Development. And their goal is to improve and accelerate the technological transfer of valuable solutions. So I believe that the best way we can start with this debate, with this panel, is to set the frame of the discussion. And maybe, Elena, you can start by giving your opinion, your answer to what do we call transparency in the eyes of consumer, and what does the consumer require from the food industry?
Yeah, indeed, when we were preparing this discussion, we were talking a long time regarding the transparency, because it's a quite complex term, and it involves a lot of different aspects, as traceability of the products that we consume, but also the nutritional facts and the list of ingredients that a product includes. Everything put in the same place, and also having in mind how the producers and the companies treat their employees, and yeah, it's a really difficult matter to be discussed. So we have to set the frame, and we could say, okay, we have to share the nutritional information, the traceability. And for sharing this, for being more transparent, maybe we could include in the term of transparency to try to make food more clean label in order to include less ingredients, and also to be in line with the panel that we're discussing just before us, that was also related with well-being. So I think for sure nutritional information, and also the traceability of the ingredients that are included in the products.
And then Daria and Jaap, from the side of the industry, what is the hurdles of that industry is facing in order to enhance the transparency to correspond to the consumer will to know more about it?
Ladies first, or shall I?
Sure. So my background is in fresh fruits and vegetables, and there we clearly have two big hurdles. One, which is more, I think, clear for everyone, is the cost. Whenever you speak about bringing additional information from the supply chain, be it through certification, mandatory or voluntary schemes, be it through just more marketing materials, be it farmer stories, food stories, all this results in costs upstream. So the question is always, who is paying that cost? And due to the supply chain structures, it is the farmer who pays, unless consumer is willing to pay more, which is not necessarily the case. So I think the cost is definitely the main hurdle. Particularly to fresh, there is one more, which in summary would be around defining what the consumer expectation actually is. So if talking about transparency towards consumers in fresh, another important aspect is quality. Like just day before yesterday, I bought apricots, and they were beautiful and expensive, but then when you buy them, I think you all experienced that, they're stone hard and just not eatable at all. Is this transparent? Was it misleading? Yes, nutritious facts are okay, they're all certified, but as a consumer, I was deeply disappointed. So I think transparency around experience and what you're actually paying for in fruits and vegetables is both difficult to communicate and difficult to understand what consumers need. But I think that's it for the fresh.
Yeah, and I think, well, with ZoomAgri, we started mainly in agricultural commodities, so grains like soybeans or barley, wheat. What we see and what we experience as well, being a commodity trader, it's a very traditional business. So changing the way we do things, many times I heard, no, this has been done like this for the last 100 years. Why would we change it? And I think that is a challenge. And as Daria rightly said, I think many times it's like, who's going to pay for this? We many times also got from our investors or from the industry, like, you need to go to the grower, you need to go to the farmer, but the farmer, is the farmer really willing to pay for it, or should it be the bigger corporates or the bigger trading companies who say, I want to have this transparency, and how do I get that? And that is via traceability most of the time. And then I think that incentive should be coming much more from a top-down than the other way around.
I think that, as we discussed before, you can only know if you're willing to pay for something if you understand the gain of what you're paying for. So in this case, what would be the gain for the industry by to, for example, increase the transparency of their supply chain?
Yeah. I think the end consumer in the supermarket or in the restaurants, they want to know more and more, where is my food coming from? And I think that there has been done quite a good job in traceability, but that's mainly, I would say, in mass balance. But really tracing a grain kernel all the way back to its origin, I think that is still something where there needs to be put in a lot of effort to get that done. And I think it's also a very challenging task. But I think the end consumer, they want to know where it's coming from. Is it ethical, what we are eating? Has it been produced in the right way? Has it been done not via deforestation, etc.? So I think that is what we will see more and more. And indeed, where is then the benefit for the end consumer, or where is the benefit for the companies? But I do believe that it's not something from only one side of the industry. I think it's something from humanity, where if we don't change things the way we're doing today, I think we're going to have a big issue in maybe already 5 to 10 years from now, if you see all the floodings going on. So it's, for me, it's something where not so much who's going to benefit from it particularly. I think as mankind, we need to change things drastically. And that means, and someone mentioned collaboration, that means you don't have a business case. True, but at the same time, I think we all have to put our shoulders under it and start moving.
Yeah, if I may include something, I think the food industry is also gaining some loyalty from the consumers, because if they identify with a company, they are more willing to pay for these products. Indeed, I was reading an article from Deloitte, and it says that around 90% of the people is more willing to pay more if they trust the company that is behind this product. So I think it's also a point to have in mind and to take into account.
That is a really interesting data to share. Thank you. How do the technologies like blockchain or AI can help to enhance the transparency?
It's definitely greatly. I think the main point is that all these technologies make traceability, transparency, A, possible, B, much cheaper in the supply chain, upstream the supply chain. So particularly in fruits, today we can detect defects in quality or just quality properties. If this strawberry is now good for France or good for Finland, there are different consumer preferences. So you can identify these traits and spot them early in the supply chain using AI. You can estimate risks, for example, for deterioration, and with that, again, make the consumers happier in the end of the supply chain. You can do so much more. So my point is that these technologies make traceability, transparency, A, easier, B, cheaper. But this doesn't resolve the hurdle we discussed before. In the end, it still has to tie to industry benefits, and today these are either consumer perks that consumers are willing to pay for, or this is some risk reduction mechanisms, or this is something required by law. So the technologies cannot resolve this dilemma, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think in that sense, AI, if you compare it with what we are building right now via AI, compared to traditional methods, I mean, I think the intelligence is limitless, where traditional methods at a certain moment run into a certain constraint. So I think that is one thing. And also, at least in agricultural commodity trading, but also the quality determination to find the people, especially in countries where salaries are much higher, I think there's going to be a lack of people willing to work in this area. And if you can then tackle that with technology like AI, also of course blockchain, we're more into AI, I think that is where there's a huge opportunity for us as a company.
Maybe if I just can add a word on blockchain. So we are not using blockchain, even though we have considered this technology. The point is that, and I deeply believe that in the food industry, food and agri industry, you first need data before you can start blocking and chaining it. So I think this first layer of just collecting data and then using it with AI is the first layer. As a next step, there is a question of how do you ensure it's not manipulated, but we are not there yet. We just need data first. That's just an addition.
Looking into the consumer, I think, Elena, in the beginning you mentioned something really interesting. That is that, for example, the the trend there is with the clean labels. No, that now consumers will not want to see as many ingredients as before. They just want as many ingredients as possible and ingredients that they can understand. And that reveals that in order to increase transparency, in some way we also need to increase accessibility, no, to the information that is displayed. So for you three, if you want to answer, like, how can we work in order to increase the accessibility of this information as an industry and as different parts of it?
Well, I think first of all we have to innovate in these ways to communicate this information to the consumers. Labels are the first thing that we think when we are okay. We have to share this information about traceability, the list of ingredients, and for sure, I think it's a really good mechanism to share this knowledge. But also we can innovate and we can use, for example, QRs or web pages where we can put all this information and share with the consumers. And for example, in one of our last projects, we work with a pilot case in Almeria, and it's called Única, and they share all the they produce vegetables and they sell these vegetables in boxes, and they include a QR in the box in order to share all the nutritional information and the traceability and the form that these vegetables are produced, and it was quite well accepted by the consumers. So now they are evaluating if they include this QR in the other boxes that they have in their lines. So we have to innovate and think another ways of sharing this information. And for sure, I think it's also important to have in mind that education is also important, because you can share a lot of information with the consumers, but if they understand the meaning of the, for example, Nutri-Score, we think that it's a quite easy standard for sharing information, but maybe it's not so important because people are comparing one product with another product, but this label, for example, it's the idea is to compare products of the same category, not the different categories. So education is mandatory for.
And also the fact that you have, for example, Nutri-Score, like a grade of A, B, C, D, but to the consumer does not know what A means. I mean, it's healthy, but what does healthy mean? Means I have to eat it, I can eat it every day, I should eat it every day. So I believe that indeed. But then who is in charge of providing this education? Shall be the industry, or who shall be?
Well, I think it's a shared compromise of everyone, industry for sure, but also the governments and the associations that are related with food, and also associations, for example, like consumers associations that share this knowledge with the whole population.
Yeah, and if I may, I think it's a very good point about education, because if you see, I'm Dutch, I live in Spain, I lived in Argentina, and if you see the differences already within Europe, the differences, how we treat the earth, or how we treat or throw away our products in some countries, and where some countries were very knowledgeable about it and very taking care of the earth, I think that is also, and that starts with education. I think that is for sure the case. And going to accessibility, sometimes people ask us, why do you charge so little for your software you offer to your clients? And I also think, I mean, if we put the prices very high, and as Daria also mentioned, like it's many times about cost, we're offering a very innovative product, which is very cheap, but that also, we do that because we want to have a lot of information. We want to have a lot of data, where then we can say, okay, then you really start tracing, then you really become more transparent. If our client only going to analyze every 10,000 tons, doesn't represent anything. But if they at least analyze every 30 tons, which is roughly a truck or a wagon, then you start building something where you say, hey, and that information, if you then as a corporate or industry have access to that, I think there's a lot of valuable information in that.
One other aspect that we wanted to discuss about this is like, what is the in the end, we all have a responsibility. Consumers, of course, they need to be also responsible of trying to be educated or trying to do more. Industry has to be responsible in order to enhance, but there is another aspect that is the investing side. And I wanted to ask you, what is the role of investors in order to ensure real transparency?
Well, I think the investors have a lot of power in that sense because they're the ones picking or choosing the companies. So if they see indeed that there is a company bringing transparency, traceability, sustainability, they are the ones there to make that choice, right? And if I look at our own case, we also get a lot of support from our investors to work on our impact. And that is not only about growth, or it's not only about becoming profitable, it's also about having a social impact. And I think there's a big role for investors to play. And in our case, they do that.
If I may add, well, first, fully agree. Investors are absolutely key for any innovation these days to come to life. At the same time, I think just desire or intent is not enough. Because in the end, any investor is money-driven. So what we are looking here at is how do you make profits for the shareholders? In case of transparency, I think the core of it still boils down to who pays for it and how do you make sure that the interests are aligned across the industry. Because if one company starts implementing technology for transparency and with that incurs cost and becomes more expensive, then they become less competitive. So the reality is such that we have to solve that problem first, and maybe regulation is an answer, which we see coming through slowly in Europe particularly. And then of course, once everyone is obliged, and for example in fresh fruits and vegetables, products must be traceable, they're not necessarily real time. So once this becomes an obligation, companies do fulfill. But then you need technology to make that easier, cheaper, faster, more efficient, and that's where investor comes in, because for him this is a business case. So I think we should also not overestimate just the human will. I think there are also some legal structures that need to be, or regulatory preconditions that need to be put in place.
I think that is an interesting thing, and actually leads me to the next and probably the last question before we go through closing remarks. That is, when nobody wants to pay, there's somebody that needs to put the rules. That is, and this is the regulations. But making regulations is not as easy as just go and say, oh, okay, so just make it transparent, because then there's a lot of other aspects and influences that need to be considered. So what shall be the approach in order to create regulations that can enhance transparency?
Well, first of all, I think regulations should be transparent itself, because yeah, it's if you are asking for transparency, you have to be sure about what is your certification. And again, I think education is key in this, yeah, because you can have a certification, okay, this is super eco-friendly, super sustainable, whatever, but if people doesn't understand what is the meaning of this certification, it's worthless. So, yeah. I don't know.
From my side, I think there should be consultation with the industry, and this should be a multi-stakeholder discussion. This can also not change from day one to day two, but if this discussion is ongoing and you have startups bringing in the technology, investors funding those startups, you have companies that are understanding how they can transform over time without becoming, uncompetitive or unprofitable, then this change is definitely possible. And it is actually happening slowly. We might wish to have that a bit faster, I would say.
Yeah, and in our case also, I think what was interesting is that indeed in some countries like in Germany or Czech Republic, Argentina, it was the industry saying, we want you guys, ZoomAgri, to become the official method, because then if there's an issue, there's an arbitration, there's a claim, we can also use your method as something official. And I think that is helping, but that's not easy, because as I said in the beginning, agriculture is so traditional business, so to get through those barriers is not easy. Today, fortunately, we have been becoming the official methods in several countries, working on more. But I think that, yes, will also be a first step where at least regulation or official institutions really recognize that indeed the future is going to be technology and the future is going to be AI. But sometimes you say, well, I want to be approved by GAFTA. They say, well, that will take you 10 years. And I think we should start to speed up those processes if the technology proves that it works.
And until you get there, you still work on the business case within the industry. So in our case, shipping right products and right quality transparently just makes sense from the economic point of view. But if there is a regulation, this enhances this, of course, further.
Thanks a lot, because I mean, we have the time that we have, and it's such a pity because it's a really interesting topic. You know, I have more questions to do. I think that we covered the main topics, that the ones that I believe that we had to discuss. We will not have time for a Q&A session, but of course you can approach to them and to me in the whole event in case you have any question, and we will be more than happy to answer. But just before the closing it, I wanted to ask you if you would like to share any closing remarks.
I think we share more or less all the topics that we discussed, and just to finish, to thank the organization for inviting us to this panel, and for being here with my colleagues. So thank you.
I would add that we all, and each of you there in the audience, is a consumer, and consumers do have enormous power. So I would just encourage you to be aware of your power and be conscious that with every decision you make in a supermarket, you're actually steering the entire supply chain. Be aware of that and use that power smartly.
I don't have anything to add to that one, so I fully agree. As I said also earlier, I think the responsibility is in each and every one of us. It's not just one company, it's just not one industry. And if it is necessary that indeed then regulations must create that environment, I think it's a pity. I think there's also for the industries, there's a big responsibility to start acting. Of course, then, as we also discussed, like many times then, one company says, we want to go much greener, we want to go much more environmental, and then the shareholders start complaining when the results are not there. So if then that must be, well, treated by regulations, then so be it. But I think it's something we, as mankind, we need to work on all together. That's my, well, at least view for the future and for my kids.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Yeah. Applause well deserved. Thank you so very much. And it looks like we still have 3 minutes. So let's see if we have the actual pioneer of our today's Q&A sessions. Who would like to ask one question at least? Feel free to. Otherwise, we'll catch up with the time left before the next session. But I still want to encourage you. One question? None whatsoever? All right. Madam, introduce yourself and your question.
Hello, I'm Nasib, co-founder of Gova. We're trying to make white sugar healthier. So we are not making it sweeter or something similar. So my question is that what is one of the main reasons you decide not to invest in a startup?
Well, I think it's difficult to answer this question since none of us are an investor.
Fair enough, but we only hope you will be asking challenging questions. So good one. Anyone would like to respond?
No, I think, startup and also as the previous panel said, of course, the environment changed a lot. Valuations were through the roof post-pandemic. Then they came off. I think, yes, startups in the end, it's called risk capital still, whether the valuations are high or low. So if you're an investor looking for maybe 5–10%, let's say, interest or year on year or results, yeah, then maybe it's not the startup to invest in. I think for looking at ourselves, we always try to grow revenues year on year, roughly 80–90%. So that is indeed, there's much more risk on the table than maybe a traditional company growing bit by bit year on year, which is not a bad thing. But I think, yes, maybe it's not hyper growth, but as startups, we need to keep growing in a very healthy and fast pace, and that comes with challenges.
From my side, also as a startup founder, I can add that be clear what market you address, if it's big enough market, and if they really need it. I think too many startups are founded around technology, which is great to have, but any investor is there to return his investment and bring profits to his investors, right? And as a founder, you have to understand that, and you have to be clear how your technology will be demanded, or to what extent your technology is demanded by the market, by whom specifically, and how you will make money with it within 7 to 10 years. So I think don't lose this commercial perspective. In the end, it's all about money.
Yeah. And one last thing, if I may, I said that last night as well. One thing is having an idea, second is building a product, and third is building a company, and especially a global company. I think that is where there's a huge challenge, at least for the 7 years we're in it. There were a lot of obstacles on the road, but I think sometimes also the founders of companies, they don't take into consideration that risk from the beginning.
Thank you very much. We've run out of time, but we do have one more question, and my studio support team tells me that the moderator for the next one hasn't arrived yet. So here's the question. Oh, wonderful. Good. So make sure you get an extra mic from there, and please approach the studio team. Thank you.
Hi, Robbie Walker. I work in animal agriculture, a company called Alltech. We work in animal health. Throughout the discussion, there was a lot of times you said that who's going to pay, and there's a cost. Certainly when it comes to market expectations around sustainability, it doesn't have to be a cost. A more efficient agriculture actually saves money for the farmer and can make money for the farmer. I think at one point you even said the farmer has to pay. The farmer can benefit. So that's my statement. I guess my question is, have you considered or have you thought about mechanisms for transfer of benefit back to the farm? And have you thought about how one can communicate that dual aspect of doing good can also make money?
Absolutely. I think this is a brilliant question, and that's what I personally deeply believe is the way to go, where you find these win-wins, where you both enhance sustainability or positive impact and economic profitability. And there are many win-wins like this. We just have to be actively looking for them. So specifically for fresh industry, waste is a big problem. So this is one of the most problematic areas. 45% of all fruits and vegetables produced never get eaten. It's almost half, and 22% of that is wasted in the supply chain. Now, if we can eliminate that waste, it is good for the environment, but it has direct economic impact. So these win-wins exist, and we should be very smart in identifying them and leveraging them. This is, however, not always going along with just enhancing transparency, because this might or might not have this economic link.
And it's a shamefully high percentage, isn't it, of course? Anyone else would like to respond?
Well, I think it's a very interesting question. It also depends a little bit on which farmer do you talk about, the one in Africa, the one in South America, the one in Northern America. I think there's a lot of difference in wealth for each farmer. We won, I think 2-3 years ago, a sustainability award by IFC in Africa, where, yeah, that farmer is definitely the weakest link in the supply chain. I would love to provide products to them where maybe it's not about who's paying for it, but then also my question to you would be, okay, how do you see the business model behind that for a company to survive? Then you must need also having funding from indeed the IFCs of this world or others if there's no income coming from the farmer or from whomever. So, happy to discuss afterwards if you want.
And allow me to express some gratitude for our speakers, because they have done something wonderful for me, as you would have noticed. They are encouraging you indirectly to ask more questions, because with the question we just heard you had, that was not only a brilliant question, but an interesting question. That can be satisfying to hear if you ask a smart question. Once again, thank you. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.